Today, the body of Liam Payne is scheduled to be brought back to the United Kingdom, and his funeral, which will be a private celebration of the music career of the former member of One Direction, will take place later this week. 3 weeks after the terrible death of former One Direction star Liam Payne, who was found dead in a fall from the balcony of his hotel room in Argentina, the burial service for Liam Payne is scheduled to take place this week. At the time of his passing in Buenos Aires, the singer was only 31 years old, and his family, friends, and fans were all devastated by his passing. Immediately following the tragic event, Jeff, Liam's father, traveled to Argentina. However, he was required to wait until the authorities in the South American nation for his body to be freed before he could return to the United Kingdom. The burial arrangements for the former member of the boy band One have not been made public because it is most likely that the funeral will be a private celebration of Liam's life. This comes after hundreds of vigils have been organized by fans in Britain and all around the world in the past several weeks. It is still unknown whether or not Liam's former bandmates will be present at the funeral. However, it has been asserted that a number of Liam's well-known acquaintances will be present at the event. A source stated that there will be a series of song tributes at the burial because Liam loved singing and making music until the end. This information was provided by the source. Liam's funeral is going to be packed with A-listers as he was so well loved in the showbiz community, and so many of them are so sad about his tragic death, the insider said in an interview with Radar Online. His family believes that it would have been appropriate for him to have a low-key and dignified farewell, as this is what Liam would have wanted given his humble nature. But there are going to be a series of song tributes from some very big acts as he loved singing and making music until the end. Following the passing of Liam, Zayn Malik, a former member of the band 1D, was scheduled to perform in the United States as part of his Stairway to the Sky tour. However, he made the decision to postpone the dates and reschedule them for the month of January. But Zayn did not make any comments about his upcoming gigs in the United Kingdom, which are scheduled to begin on November 20 in Edinburgh. Because of this, it is highly possible that he will have to arrive in Britain earlier than usual if he decides to attend the funeral. Other members of the band have not disclosed any information regarding whether or not they would be present at the funeral. In 2008, when he was only 14 years old, Liam participated in his first audition for The X Factor. He sang Frank Sinatra's "Fly Me to the Moon." 2 years later, when he was 16 years old, he returned to the show and was placed in One Direction alongside Niall Horan, Louis Tomlinson, Zayn Malik, and Harry Styles. One Direction went on to become one of the most successful boy bands in the world. As a result of the unfortunate circumstances surrounding his passing, a petition on Change.org was initiated to advocate for legislation that would safeguard the mental health of artists working in the entertainment industry. Liam's Law is a piece of legislation that would require regular mental health check-ups, adequate rest periods, and the presence of mental health professionals on set, including any ongoing support during their career. The petition hopes to implore lawmakers to create legislation safeguarding the mental health of artists within the industry, and calls for legislation that would be referred to as Liam's Law. Parents of One in the past, Liam has stated that he struggled with alcoholism during the height of his success. He has described reaching rock bottom to Stephen Bartlett, the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast. However, in 2023, he stated that he was sober after beginning treatment at a rehabilitation center. The world was left reeling when the news broke. Liam Payne, one of the most beloved members of the global sensation One Direction, had passed away. The grief was instantaneous and profound, not just from the millions of fans who had followed his career, but also from his former bandmates, whose lives had been inextricably linked with his for over a decade. Liam Payne, who had been a member of One Direction alongside Harry Styles, Louis Tomlinson, Niall Horan, and Zayn Malik, was a key figure in the band's meteoric rise to fame. The group, formed on the British reality show The X Factor in 2010, quickly became one of the most iconic pop acts of the 2010s. Together, they released 5 studio albums, sold millions of records, and captured the hearts of fans across the world. However, as with many boy bands, the story of One Direction did not have an indefinite happy ending. After their hiatus in 2016, each member went on to pursue solo careers, with varying levels of success. Despite the individual paths they took, one thing remained constant: the bond they had formed during their time together as a band. That bond, forged through years of late-night studio sessions, whirlwind tours, and endless press tours, could not be easily broken. But as time went on, the reunion fans so desperately hoped for seemed less and less likely as each member became busier with their own endeavors. Yet, when tragedy strikes, the most unexpected reunions can happen. The question on everyone's minds after the news of Liam's death was not only about the future of his family and fans, but also about the reunion of his bandmates Harry, Louis, Niall, and even Zayn. Would they be there? Could they come together in the most heartbreaking of circumstances? The enduring bond of One Direction. One Direction's success was not just a result of their individual talents, but of their chemistry as a group. The five young men came from different backgrounds, but together they formed an entity greater than the sum of its parts. Fans loved them not just for their music, but for their personalities and camaraderie. The way they joked with one another, teased each other, and genuinely seemed to enjoy each other's company made it easy to believe that their friendship was genuine. But like many bands that rise to fame quickly, One Direction's journey was not without its challenges. Tensions arose over the years, particularly as the group became increasingly famous. Zayn Malik's departure in 2015 left a noticeable gap, and with the band on hiatus in 2016, speculation about the future of One Direction began to swirl. Would they ever come back together, or had their time as a unit come to an end? Despite the rumors, the bandmates always emphasized that there was no bad blood between them. They spoke fondly of each other in interviews, and while they didn't collaborate much musically in the years after their hiatus, there was always a sense of mutual respect and affection. For instance, when Harry Styles released his self-titled debut album in 2017, both Niall and Liam were quick to praise it, and Liam himself spoke highly of his bandmates' solo endeavors. Liam Payne's relationship with the other members of One Direction, however, was more complicated. In interviews, Liam had admitted that he and some of the other members, particularly Harry and Louis, had experienced moments of tension during the band's time together. The constant pressure of fame and the overwhelming expectations placed on them as young men were difficult to manage. But in the years following the band's hiatus, the atmosphere seemed to soften. Liam in particular had been vocal about his desire for a reunion, although he was the first to acknowledge that it might never happen. However, despite the ups and downs, the one thing that remained consistent was the profound sense of camaraderie and shared history between the bandmates. When something like Liam's untimely death occurs, it's hard to imagine how that shared bond could be disregarded, even after years of separate paths. The power of grief. A reunion in tragedy. There is something almost sacred about moments of loss. In the aftermath of a death, it is common for old friends, estranged family members, and loved ones to come together. Grief, in its own way, is a great equalizer. It allows for reconciliation, for healing, and for the acknowledgement of the deep connections that tie people together, even if they've been distant for years. For Harry, Louis, Niall, and Zayn, the death of Liam Payne would have been a devastating loss, not just because of the shared history they had with him, but because of the personal connection they had forged over the years. Though their relationships were not without their complexities, there was an undeniable bond of brotherhood that ran through them. In the wake of his passing, it's likely that the surviving members would need to reconcile their differences, if only for the sake of remembering the person they once were as a group. One Direction's reunion in such a tragic moment would not be about the music or the fanfare of their past stardom. It would be about honoring their shared memories of a friend, a brother, and a colleague. It would be a moment of vulnerability and raw emotion, perhaps, but also a moment of healing. For fans who had spent years hoping for a reunion, the reunion of the remaining members of One Direction at Liam's funeral would be both the most heartbreaking and the most poignant moment of their journey. The impact on the fans. For millions of fans around the world, the death of Liam Payne would be felt deeply. One Direction was not just a pop band for many, it was the soundtrack to their formative years. The band had inspired loyalty, passion, and a sense of belonging in ways that few acts had. Liam, with his distinct voice and down-to-earth demeanor, was often seen as the most relatable member of the group. His openness about his struggles, both personally and professionally, made him someone many fans could identify with. For his passing to prompt a reunion of the band at his funeral would undoubtedly be a powerful moment of closure for these fans. In the weeks and months following Liam's death, there would be a period of mourning, but also reflection. Fans would look back on the music that brought them so much joy, remembering the concerts, the songs, and the sense of community they had with other Directioners. The reunion of the bandmates in such a heartbreaking moment would be bittersweet. It would speak to the enduring power of their bond, a bond forged in youth, fame, and love, and would give fans a final, poignant moment to say goodbye. While the surviving members of One Direction might never fully be able to comprehend the depth of the impact their music had on fans, their collective presence at Liam's funeral would send a message that would be felt across the world. It would show that, even in the darkest of times, the love they shared as a group could not be extinguished. It would also reflect how, in moments of immense grief, the people who mattered most are those who have stood beside you through thick and thin, through personal struggles, and through public triumphs. The future without Liam. In the wake of Liam Payne's funeral and the reunion of the surviving members of One Direction, the world would face the stark reality that the band, as it once was, had truly come to an end. Without Liam, it would be impossible for the group to continue as it had before. His unique voice and his place in the group were irreplaceable, and while the other members would undoubtedly continue with their solo careers, One Direction as a musical entity would cease to exist. However, their shared memories of Liam would live on. His legacy would be preserved not just in the music he made, but in the love and admiration he received from his bandmates and fans alike. The reunion of One Direction at his funeral would serve as a tribute to his contributions to the band and to the people he touched throughout his life. For Harry, Louis, Niall, and Zayn, the pain of losing Liam would be a burden they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. But in their reunion, they would also find solace. They would realize that, despite everything, despite the years apart and the complexities of their individual lives, they were united in their grief, just as they had once been united in their music. One Direction may never have a formal reunion on stage again. But in the most heartbreaking of circumstances, they would come together as brothers, not to perform for the world, but to mourn for their friend. And in that quiet, somber moment, the true meaning of their bond would be realized. It wasn't just about the fame, the money, or the music. It was about the deep, unbreakable connection they had with one another, a connection that could survive even the most heartbreaking of circumstances.